Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Thank you to the Muslim Women's Alliance and to MAS-ICNA for putting on this important conference. I'm honored to speak today alongside Sister Aisha Adawiya and Dr. Jasser Oda, and really I feel like they've summed up much of this conversation. As was mentioned, I'm a project manager at the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, and we're a research organization, so that means I have a lot of data and some recommendations. So the data I want to share with you today really will help paint the picture of our community right now. I want to share some demographic information, and then I want to share some information about Muslim women's lived experience, and then end with our recommendations. And I think this is important. Sister Aisha mentioned the fact that women are often not sharing the pain, the trauma that they experience in the masjid sometimes. And I think that it is important that we're sharing, our story with people. But I do also think that different things resonate with people, right? Oftentimes I've heard, a woman saying they've had this experience or they share their experience, and then people are dismissive. Well, that was just that one incident. That was just that one time, Very quickly we can, just kind of sweep it under the rug. So we do have some data, not necessarily on Muslim experiences in the masjid per se, but just Muslim women's lived experiences that I hope that together with some of the stories that we experience can paint a picture, a convincing argument, and then of course along with the prophetic model, help bring the entire community to get on board to create these spaces that are comfortable and welcoming for the entire community. So at ISPU, we wanted to do research on mosque inclusivity and effectiveness because mosques matter. And since you guys have all joined us here today, I think we all agree. But often we think about the masjid as a place that just fills a spiritual, we go to seek a spiritual or religious need. In reality, frequent mosque attendance actually goes beyond that. Our research at ISPU and the research of other organizations show that frequent mosque attendance actually leads to more volunteerism, better mental health, which I know is sometimes hard to believe depending on your experience, but it can, including lower reports of stress and anger, and also higher levels of civic engagement. So the more often you attend a mosque, the more likely you are to attend a mosque, the more likely you are to cooperate in your community, the more likely you are to be registered to vote and to plan to vote. So there's a lot of positive correlations when you attend a mosque, aside fulfilling that spiritual, religious, and social need. But yeah, as we discussed, mosques are often alienating to women, converts, and young adults. And this is a problem not just for the attendees, but also mosque leaders. So on the one hand, you have, Muslim women and attendees saying they're struggling in the masjid. And on the other hand, you also have leaders who are saying that they're struggling with the lack of volunteers and a lack of commitment from their members. So you're feeling this pain on both sides. So why should we make mosques more inclusive? I mean, obviously, other than it being the right thing to do, it also does increase the number of volunteers. It sustains donors. It obviously can increase that spiritual engagement for the entire community. It promotes stronger and more vibrant communities. It builds a hub for hope, again, both internally strengthening the community and then allowing those community members to look outwards and support the community outside of them. It provides sanctuaries of support in hostile environments, and it grows the next generation of Muslim Americans. So I don't want to go too far into what we did in the Reimagining Muslim Spaces project. I do encourage you to check out the report. And I will say it is more than just a report. So if you go on ispu.org/RMS, you'll find our report. We have a series of case studies. We have short videos, infographics, and we have links to other organizations that are doing this work, including Muslim Women's Alliance, including Women Islam, and including some of Dr. Jasser Oda's work. So again, very honored to be up here today. So I wanted to kind of set the stage with, some demographics on the Muslim community. On the Muslim community and also on our lived experiences. So, as we all know, and what we've been talking about, is that Muslim women in the community is a contentious issue, right? Everything from our roles to our space to how we're dressed is up for discussion and argument. And it doesn't have to be this way. In the Quran, Allah encourages a supportive, collaborative relationship with each other, men and women, not one where we are at odds. Allah says in Surah Tawbah, Ayah 71, the believing men and believing women are guardians of one another. They advocate virtue, forbid evil, perform the prayers, practice charity, and obey God and His messenger. These God will have compassion on them. God is noble and wise. So again, guardians of one another, not in conflict, but in support of one another. So, we've been talking a lot about the political climate, and while it's so difficult for so many affected groups, I mean, really, unless you were a white, rich, straight male, people were affected in this and are affected in this current climate. But Muslim women especially are suffering, and much more than Muslim men. According to our research at ISPU, Muslim women are 2 times as likely to report emotional stress following the election to the point of seeking help. They're more likely to have made plans to leave the country if necessary, and almost half of the women we spoke to feared for their personal safety following the election. Muslim women are also more likely to experience religious discrimination than men, and almost 70% of them experienced some religious discrimination in the last year. So, well more than half, 70%. However, we know that Muslim women rock, so we are likely to respond to the current climate with action. I mean, and this is something that I felt very empowered by. It's like, yes, we as Muslim women are suffering, for sure, but we're not just hiding under the table. We're actually standing up really strongly in response to the current climate in both outwardly, in society, and inwardly in our community. So we found that 16% of women signed up for a self-defense class following the election. 29% of women increased their donations to civic and faith organizations, and that's compared to 19% of men. Men, get your act together. And one of my favorites, actually, 84% of women did not change their appearance to look less Muslim. So the vast majority of Muslim women, even though they were literally under attack, 70% of them were experiencing discrimination, they did not choose to look more or less visible Muslim. They chose to, continue to be very proud and loud Muslims in the society. Another interesting data point is that women attend the mosque almost as often as men. So our research shows that 35% of women attend a mosque at least once a week or more, and that's compared to 45% of men. So obviously there's the religious mandate of men being required to go for Jummah at least once a week, and about 45% of American Muslim men are attending at least once a week, but so are 35% of women. So, it's not even, but it's actually very close. So we are attending at similar rates. However, women are actually slightly more likely to report that religion is important to them than men. So women actually have higher levels of reporting that religion is important to them than men do. So this is a community that, again, even though we're not always welcome in the mosque, we're met with the locked or no door, we still really value our religion. And it's actually 91% of women said that they find religion important in their daily life. So that's almost all of us. And then one interesting data point that I do want to share, and it seems it's a little off compared to the other ones though, is that Muslim women are the most likely faith group, compared to other faith groups in the country, to turn to a religious leader when faced with domestic violence issues. So 51% of Muslim women who were victims of domestic violence actually reported it to an imam or religious leader. And this was far and above higher than any other faith group in terms of who they sought help from in this situation. So what this data shows is that Muslim women who are suffering more in the political climate, who are as likely to attend a mosque and more likely to say religion is important to them, are turning to masjids seeking a safe place, one that serves both their religious and their physical needs. So how can we make this space more inclusive and welcoming for them? As mentioned, we do have a report full of a number of recommendations, but I'm going to share a few of them with you today, and then we'll turn it over to discussion. So our first one, and echoing one that you shared, was that women should have the choice to pray in the main musalla or in a separate area. And the key word here for us is choice, because we do recognize that some women do prefer to pray behind a barrier. And actually the data shows it's almost evenly split in terms of almost exactly half of the women prefer to, on a national level, to pray behind a curtain, and half want to pray without any barrier behind men. So because there is this desire of both, there should be that choice, right? As you mentioned, Aisha, like one person's preference should not dictate the other. So this recommendation is not only, of course, modeled off of the prophetic mosque where there were no barriers, but it's also endorsed by the Fiqh Council of North America. And again, we are calling upon masjids to ensure that women have access to the main musalla, not just to perform salah and listen to the Jummah khutbah, but also to participate in lectures and other discussions. Our second one, which again, I know it was already said, but it's so important that we want to repeat it, is that women should be able to serve on masjid boards and be a part of masjid leadership. As part of our research project, we did focus groups across the country, and one of our focus group participants said, "When I see a woman on the board, I automatically feel that the mosque is more open to women." And again, this recommendation is also endorsed by the Fiqh Council of North America. And in their recommendation by the Fiqh Council, they were saying that during the Prophet ﷺ's time, there wasn't a formal shura process, but he set the example of consulting with all segments of the Muslim community. And now here in this country, now that we do have the formal boards and this formal decision-making process, it's incumbent on us to make sure that women are included in that. And it is going beyond representation, right? It's not just, and representation is important, but when you're excluding women from leadership, you're actually really missing out, not on important voices, but also on important resources. So again, going back to the data, and Muslim women rocking, Muslim women are more likely to attain higher education than Muslim men. In fact, 40% of Muslim women have a college degree compared to 35% of men. Muslim women are also more likely to be in the middle class than men. 28% of Muslim women are in the middle class, and 19% of men are. And I see women like, yes. So by including Muslim women in leadership, masjids are actually opening the door to resources, education, experience, skills, and dollars. I mean, and these are resources that most masajid across the country need and are in need of. Our third recommendation is to match resources and space allocation for women. Again, I alluded to the fact that the data shows that men and women are attending at very similar rates, and so the space should reflect that. And it shouldn't just reflect that in terms of like, we're gonna draw the line and make sure, measure it out, but the women's spaces should be clean, well lit, well ventilated, tastefully decorated, and well furnished to ensure a comfortable place for worship. And really, I have to pause here and say that it's so upsetting that we have to actually spell that out. Like, please have a clean area for women. I'm not sure what message we're sending to our entire community when we're comfortable putting women in dank, dark, cramped back rooms. It's really problematic. When I actually started working on this project, my daughter was 4 years old at the time. And I was explaining to her the project that I was taking on, right? I said, very briefly, we're doing a project talking about making masjids better. And I didn't even say for women, for young adults, for converts, nothing, just try to make masjids better. And I asked her, I was like, do you have any ideas of how we can make the masjid better? And she paused for a moment, and then without missing a beat, she said, I think in the women's section, we should take the walls and put them really far away. Like, just put them really, really far away. And, and I just looked at her, and I'm like, women, yes, but children can be the ultimate truth tellers, right? They just get right to the point. They see a problem, they have the solution. And, I mean, here was this 4-year-old who comes to the masjid with me sometimes and is already noticing that when she goes with Baba, there's this huge space for her. And when she goes with me, we have to, start at the back of the parking lot, wrap all the way around the building, go into the side door, and then go into this tiny space. And at 4 years old, she noticed that was a problem and that was not okay. Just a couple more here. Number 4, encourage the imam to be accessible. So in many cases, the face of the masjid and the main source of Islamic knowledge is the imam. So when the imam is cut off from women, it gives a distinct impression that women are marginalized, and it actually marginalizes them. So imam should be accessible to women and also hold sessions specifically for women. So they have that opportunity to ask questions, to learn in a really safe environment. And the last one I'll share is to address the issues that women face. MAS halaqas, khutbas should be aimed at men and women and address issues that are relevant to women. So while it's important to have that time, a women's only time for women to bring up their issues and talk and learn from the imam should actually take time in a communal setting to talk about issues that are specific to women. So not only does that provide knowledge and support to the entire community, it signals to the entire community that the masjid takes seriously the concerns of women. I just want to end by saying that making mosques a more welcoming space for women is not just a women's issue. I think we all alluded to that. It is a communal issue. The Prophet ﷺ said, "The believers in their love, mutual kindness, and close ties are like one body. When any part complains, the whole body responds to it with wakefulness and fever." And right now, if we have half of our community, throw the kids in there, that's the majority of the community, hurting in these spaces and in these experiences, really it's incumbent upon all of us, men and women, to take on this issue. It's also not a women versus men issue. I shared a lot of data today about comparing the men and the female stats. But I mean, honestly, some of the most unwelcoming experiences that women have are at the hands of another woman, right? So there's a lot of this internalized misogyny and these internalized ideas, these internalized misinformation. I was like taking notes frantically during Dr. Jasser's section because I'm like, wait, what? Yes, I've always heard that hadith narrated that way. What? I'm gonna have a lot of fun conversations after this session. So it's not, again, just a female versus man issue. It's something for all of us collectively to talk about. But with that said, even though the issues sometimes feel overwhelming and daunting, I have so much hope that they will be resolved, and I have confidence that they will be resolved. Firstly, I'm so grateful to the women and men organizations who are spending their time, money, effort, energy focused on making these spaces better for us. Secondly, our recommendations are really straightforward. These are not radical ideas. These are not calling to reform Islam. These are not multi-million-dollar projects. Really simple things that we can do to make the mosque a better place for everybody. And even though I know changing the culture of a place, a center, a people is easier said than done, because we have the prophetic model as a guide, I know that we can get there. And everything that we've all spoken about or advocating for is in line with that prophetic model. And one of the hadiths I want to end with is the Prophet ﷺ said, "Make things easy for people and do not make them difficult, and cheer people up and do not drive them away." That it's a part of who we are. It's a part of our culture. The Prophet ﷺ also said, "You will not enter paradise until you believe, and you will not believe until you love one another. So spread salam, peace, spread salam among yourselves." I mean, there's just so much in our tradition that we can really rely on to make our masajid a more welcoming space for everybody. And I actually just want to end with my favorite description of the Prophet ﷺ. Abdullah ibn Harith said about him, "I have never seen anyone smile more than the Prophet ﷺ." So I pray that collectively our work will create Muslim spaces full of smiling people that can serve our entire community. Inshallah.